here is what I would like you to work towards today in class. It's a series of arches that I've placed onto the Lions Conservancy site in Fargo. Some of you might be working with this in studio. I've got my sun turned on here, but you don't have to. And I would like you to follow along in this video on your own in class. Let myself or Jake know if you have any questions. But this way, I just want you to work at your own pace. If you get done ahead of time, you're free to go, as I've probably explained already. So let's jump right into this. I will start a new file. And I'm going to intentionally go through this pretty quick. So use the pause and play quite liberally. First thing, window, go to Model Info. Let's set our units, which is right here, to engineering. That defaults to feet, and let's deselect enable length snapping. So with that set, grab the rectangle tool, and remember, click, release, click. Just click once to start it. And I will type 1, 1 and press enter. So that gives me very conveniently a 1 foot by 1 foot square. Now, I use my mouse for all of my navigation, but all of the navigation tools are over here. It's the blue colored guys, orbit, pan, zooming. I recommend just using the mouse. So now I'll grab the push-pull tool and I'll click to start and then type 10 feet and hit enter. So that gives me a nice post that's 10 feet tall, 1 foot by 1 foot in width and depth. So select tool, let's select the whole thing. I will right click and make this a component, not a group, but a component, and I will call this post. So next thing I'll do is make a copy, grab the move tool, hit the right modifier key, and I'll just start dragging, making sure that I'm inferring in the red direction. So see the dashed red line, you want that, you don't want that, and you definitely don't want blue. So I'm in the red direction. All I need to do is get it started in the right direction, and then I can type 10 and hit enter. So that is now placed 10 feet away from this one. So for the beam, we'll grab the rectangle tool, and I'll snap from that corner. So once I see it kind of light up, click, go to this corner and click. Grab the push-pull this down, and type 18. This time you need the inches tick mark, so add that. And if you don't, if I did 18 instead, just type it again before you do anything else. 18 inches, there we go. So now we will turn that into a component as well. Select tool, triple click. It's a nice way to select all those geometries. You do not want to select the two posts, and you don't want to only select the middle geometries. Notice I did not select the edges. So select tool, triple click. And if you're not sure, just click in white space and try it again. Right click, make component. This time I will type beam. So now I've got my 3 items, post, post, beam. Next step, very important, we will create a nested component. So grab the select tool, select everything, and once again, right click and select make component. And this time I'll call it arch. So very important here that we're working with a nested component, a very simple nested component, but you can nest components indefinitely. If I grab my select tool and just click once on this shape, it highlights because we're selecting one entity. If I double click, it enters into edit mode, which allows me to select these 3 parts. And if I double click again, notice I've got successive dashed boxes here telling me that I'm inside a nested component. Now I can access and click on the individual geometries. So just be aware of that. I will click out in white space a couple times to zoom back out. So let's make a copy of this arch. Grab the select tool, select it, move tool, modifier, and I'll make sure I'm in the green direction. Let's make that 10 feet, how about? Now before you do anything else, let's make 2 copies or 3 copies. So I'll type 3x and hit enter. There we go, gives me a total of 4. Now because these are components, if I edit one, they all should change. Let's add a little peak to this beam, and we need to get into it first. So select tool, double click, that gives us one level, double click again, and when in doubt, just keep double clicking until you can actually see that you are selecting geometries and not groups. So notice I've got this face selected. I'm going to click just in the white space right here, not too far out because it'll boot me out of the edit mode, but right there. Now I'm no longer pre-selecting any geometries. And what I'd like to do is grab the pencil tool, and I'm just going to hover until I can find the midpoint. And it will, the tooltip will tell you when you find the midpoint. Click to start the line, and on the opposite side, again, make sure it's midpoint, click to position. So we've just drawn a very simple line, but this has now given us the geometries where we can manipulate the shape a little bit more with the move tool. So grab the move tool, nothing should be selected, and as you hover, you'll see the items highlight. Once that little line is highlighted, click on it, and notice we can kind of go all over the place. We want to restrain this to the blue direction. So two ways to do this is, once it's started in the blue direction, hold down Shift, and for some reason mine is not working, but the other way to do it is to just tap your up or down arrow key. So I'll try that one. There we go. Now I'm locked in the blue direction, and if I want this to be a very precise move, I can enter that numerically. So I want to make this exactly 18 inches. I'll type 18 inches, and that's not what I wanted at all. Let's try this again. 18 inches. There we go. So I'm going to back up and try that again just because I had a little something weird happen. Line, move tool. I don't even necessarily need to lock it. I just have to make sure it's started in that direction. 18 inches. There we go. So let's exit out of component mode, component edit mode, just by clicking in white space with the select tool, and we can see that they all changed. So a couple things about working with and kind of keeping your bearings in the SketchUp model. I'm going to just make a very simple base plane here with the rectangle tool. So I'll click out in white space and just give me something that these are actually sitting on. To show you the next step, this is very useful here. If I were to edit one of these posts, again, select tool, double click, and now I'm editing just this post here. And if I grab that bottom edge and go ahead, whoops, I'm not editing the post, I'm only one level deep, sorry. Now I'm editing the post. Grab the move tool, I'm going to grab that bottom edge and drag it out, and I can see that they're all changing. And let's make that 18 inches as well. So we'll fix this other one, don't worry about that quite yet, but I want to show you how to kind of clean up your view here. We're seeing everything. Very useful is if you go to camera, go to view, component edit, and you've got two options here, hide rest of model and hide similar components. So if I hide rest of model, it does just that. Everything that is not this component is now hidden. And if I go back to view, component edit, and hide similar components, that will just hide completely everything. So whenever you're editing a component, that's all you're seeing. And it's kind of nice, especially as the models get more and more complicated. As I exit out of this, I can see that I am still have my entire model here. So let's fix this other beam here. We need to rotate it or flip it. So I will, just to get my bearing down here, I'll zoom out, select tool, click in white space just to kind of reset. So double click once to get into edit mode. Now we don't want to double click again because I could rotate this. Don't do this incidentally. I could rotate that 180 degrees and it might look right, but now that one's wrong. So let me just undo that. Here is what you want to do. Edit it or double click to the point where you can select these parts individually, and with this one highlighted, right click on it, go to flip along and select components red. So now that's a mirror of this one over here. It just needs to be moved into place. Grab the move tool, grab this corner and snap it to right there. Okay, let's zoom out and see where we are. Okay, the outliner, definitely worth showing. If you click on Window and go to Outliner, this is the structural or a visual layout of the structure of your model in outline form, hence Outliner. Now, the top level is untitled, which means we haven't saved this. Let's save this file. Probably should have did this sooner. Save as, you know, you can call it whatever you want. I'll call it my arch 232. So now I can see that that is reflected in the outliner. That's the top level. Inside of this, I've got 4 arches. And if I expand each one of these arches, I can see that they are made up of a beam and 2 posts. So if I were to, in my model, with the select tool, highlight any one of these, I can see that reflected in the outliner. And if I double click, the outliner kind of changes colors and it shows you which item you're actually working with. So this is kind of nice because as your models get more and more complicated, you can access and edit these visually through the model or straight from the outliner. If I want to edit this beam right here, well, first I got to find the right one, I guess, but you can click on it right in the outliner. So if I double click, I'm actually the same thing as digging right in. So that's kind of just a nice organizational thing. You can also exit out by clicking on the top level, which is the same as clicking in white space. So let's close the outliner. Just want you to be aware of it. A couple more items to change here. And in fact, let's get rid of 3 of these guys. Just go back to 1. So the next thing I want to do is get to this angle of this piece to line up with this angle here. So I need to turn off those 2 views. So view, component, edit, let's turn that off. View, component, edit, turn that off. So I need to edit at a geometry level. Grab the select tool, double click, you know, just keep double clicking until you can access the individual geometries. I will pre-select that bar or that edge right there. This part's a little tricky, so pay attention. Grab the move tool. I'll start the move on the midpoint. Just has to be somewhere on the line. Again, just because I'm clicking, not dragging, I kind of can move it all over here, but I want to lock this in the blue direction, so up or down arrow key, just tap it. Now, it might seem a little goofy here, but I can snap to the other geometry. So I'm just hovering, but that line is directly across from this corner where my mouse is touching. I could probably find a midpoint right there. But what's kind of neat about this is you can also infer slopes. So take a look at where my cursor is at. I'm on this slope, and so it is inferring that slope, and that's why it's snapping to where it's snapping. So if I click right there, then I'll orbit. I can see that it has a perfectly lined up slope. Very useful little SketchUp trick there. And the other side, because it's a mirror, should also be lining up. All right, grab the select tool. Let's exit out of that. Not so bad. Let's see. Let's get rid of our base here. So let's go ahead and select that and hit delete. Oh yeah, we're going to add the arch. So I'm intentionally going to walk you through the wrong way to do something because hopefully we'll learn something from it. Make sure you're not editing any components. Grab the arc tool, which is right here, and let's draw an arc like this. So we can just eye this one. Now, you may want to try to push-pull that. If you grab the push-pull tool and try to push-pull, nothing happens because that geometry exists outside of this component, which is a common mistake. You'll draw something and when you intended to draw it inside of a component, here's a nice way to fix it. Grab the geometries that you drew. In this case, it's just a very simple arc with the select tool. Go to edit and then cut. And now we're going to dig into this component. So just keep double clicking until we are accessing these geometries. Go back to edit and select paste in place. That puts that cut geometry back exactly where it was, but because we are inside of a component, it has now placed it inside. And I can see that these are 2 separate faces right here. Now we can grab the push-pull tool. Oops, and don't do what I just did. I had something pre-selected. If you do that, just hit undo. There we go. Click to start the push-pull. Don't just eye it. Make sure you snap it to something on that back edge. So I will click right there, and there we go. Let's exit out of here. So the next step is to do an array. We've done this in class, but I want to walk you through the radial array. So another very important. It's all important to pay attention to all of this, but pay extra attention to this step. Now, sometimes I like to do the line tool to kind of create some helper geometries. So I'll grab that, and I'm going to start this line very specifically at the midpoint at the bottom of this beam. And I'm going to draw in the red direction 20 feet. So there we go. I've now drawn that line exactly 20 feet. That's the point that I'm going to rotate around. So I'm going to hit escape to quit drawing. The rotate tool, which is this guy right here, is a little different than the move tool. It requires a few more steps, and it's definitely easier to pre-select. So with the select tool, I will select my arch, then grab the move tool, rotate tool, and when in doubt, just keep an eye on the instructions down here. It kind of tells you the next steps. So first step is to determine the rotation origin, and I'm going to hover till I'm on this endpoint and click. So not much has happened, but I've set that as the rotation point, and I'm just moving my mouse. The next two steps it needs is a start and an end. So if I click to start, it does just that, and it's just waiting for me to click again to end. And I'm going to undo that and go through those steps again. So select the object that you'd like to rotate, grab the tool, click to set the origin, and click to start the rotation. Now, because this is just like the move tool, all you need to do is tap Control to start doing a copy. Now, I've also mentioned this with whenever you see this little compass tool, if your mouse is on top of it, it will snap at a set interval. Mine happened to be 15 degrees. If your cursor is away from that, it's not quite as precise, but we want this to be exactly 90 degrees. You can either just snap to it or just type 90 and hit enter. Very important before you continue is to make copies. So let's type 5 and /. So that gives me 5 copies. There we go. Next step is to do that exact same step, but because we kind of want this thing to snake, I will now take the pencil tool, click here, and I will draw in the green direction 20 feet. That's still selected, so I can just go straight to my rotate tool, click to set the rotation origin, click to start, tap Control to make a copy, make sure it's 90 degrees, click, and type 5 / enter. So there, we've got a pretty good start on this. Let me go ahead and erase those two little helper geometries. So at this point, very important that you kind of realize or think about if you're editing something inside the box or outside of the box. When I talk about the box, I'm talking about the component. If I were to scale one of these guys, so I'm just going to select this one, grab my scale tool, and let's raise that up. Only that one is changing, and none of its sibling components are changing. Let's hit undo. But if I were to edit one of these components, select everything, and do the same scale, because I'm editing the component inside the box, all of them will reflect that change. So just be aware of that. I'm going to undo that because I want to scale these from the outside in by successive amounts of 10%. So if that doesn't make sense, just follow along. Grab the select tool, hold down shift, and select all of these except the outside 2. And I actually did that the very long way here because I could also select everything, hold down Shift and then click on the two outer ones as I'm holding down Shift, because that will do a deselect. So with those selected, grab the scale tool, grab the middle, just get it started, and type 1.1. So I'm scaling this in the blue direction, 1.1%. Now I can grab my select tool, and I can hold down Shift and deselect those two guys. Once again, I'll do the scale, 1.1%. And just do this a couple times. Deselect, scale. Deselect those two guys and scale. Deselect, deselect. One more to go. I gotta zoom in to make sure I can grab that center green handle. 1.1. So we've got the shape generally down. To grab the site, we did this before, but you'll want to find the Add Location button. I'm already zoomed in here, but if you were to just search for Fargo, it dumps you right on Robert Street. I'll zoom out and keep zooming out. This site is down here somewhere. So if you can keep zooming out until you can kind of see this part of the river where it's undeveloped on one side and developed on the other. You'll see Trollwood Performing Arts, which is a pretty cool little site if you ever get a chance. And not this one, but the open space below. So there's our site. Hit select region and hit grab. So now when it brings it in, you don't want to move the actual imported file, but it's okay to move your stuff around because that's georeference. This is not. I'll go ahead and grab the select tool, grab all those guys, then grab the move tool, and I'm just going to drag this over by the front here. There we go. And notice I did a move where I clicked from point to point on this plane. You don't want to do this. You don't want to select your items, grab the move tool, and grab it right here because, you know, if you're not really paying attention, I'm actually touching an end point. So that's my starting point. So watch what happens if I click to start the move, and now it's snapping to that face. So it's moving from a point to a point, and that will sink it underground. So I'll just hit escape. The other way is to just either make sure you grab it at the bottom end point or just click on 2 points on this plane. Whoops, I did not mean to click that. So very close to getting done. Just a couple small fixes here. Maybe you don't want these lines to be showing. You know, you want this to look like one unit, and we don't want that little line to show. A little bit of cleanup. And for this, I'm going to turn on my those two options from the View menu, which are Hide Rest of Model and Hide Similar Components. So when I'm editing, you'll see why this is important. Let's grab the Select tool, just double click, keep double clicking until we are editing this top beam. Now remember, if you double click, it selects that geometry and any immediate geometries, but not anything further. So if I double click on this face, it selects that face and the outside edges. With that selected, you can right click and select hide. It's still there, just hidden. Orbiting around to the other side, double click, right click, and hide. So I've hidden those lines, but now I still need to hide the lines on the beam. So grab my select tool, just click to get it out, and you know what, I'll exit out all the way just because it's a... So if I were to double click and keep double clicking here, I can't hide the whole thing because that happens. So we need to draw a little bit of extra geometry. Let's undo that. Undo, there we go. So what I will do is I'll get all the way down to editing this beam, and for this step we actually do need the rest of the model turned on. So back to View, Component Edit, there we go, because we are going to draw a line at the bottom of this, but I have to make sure that I'm editing those geometries. Grab the pencil tool, and I've just drawn a line from that corner to that corner, Now I will go back and turn off one of those. Hide rest of model. And let's also hide similar components. So now I can double click, right click, and select hide. Now because that's the same copy as the other side, you only need to do it once. There we go. We've got a nice clean arch. I think the one other step in the initial example that I have not done yet is to draw a little circle. So circle tool, I will infer directly down, grab the push-pull tool. And here's another example. You don't want to eye it, because if you eye it, you're not going to get it directly on. After you've started the push-pull, just reference a back corner. And because those center ones are scaled, on those it'll be an oval. On the one we just drew, it's a circle. So there you go. No need to upload this. Just want you to follow along in class and ask questions as we go about it. So there you go. Good luck.